with a comprehensive approach that's resolving many of those challenges. First, with this legislation, our partners at the Federal Aviation Administration will install new surface surveillance equipment at AUS to further enhance our safety on the runways and the taxiways. And we are grateful to our partners at the FAA for prioritizing Austin Airport as one of the first airports in the nation to receive this equipment. Second, the investment in the aviation workforce. This means recruiting and retaining more qualified air traffic controllers, safety inspectors, and other critical federal personnel that the City of Austin relies on to operate 24/7 our AUS airports. And this translates into smoother operation and ultimately safe and more efficient travel experience for our passengers. And lastly, this bill allocates the largest increase of funding for the Airport Improvement Program and the first increase of funding for this program in nearly 2 decades. Now, airports across the United States will benefit from $4 billion investment. We're excited about the funding and the opportunities to support our much-needed expansion. The FAA Reauthorization Act is a critical step forward. It signifies commitment to modern, safe, and efficient transportation system. At Austin Bergstrom International Airport, we are excited to leverage these resources to provide you the best possible travel experience. I want to thank Senator Ted Cruz for championing this piece of critical legislation. I also want to thank all the members of our federal delegation for their work to pass this bill. And now, please join me in welcoming the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee Ranking Member, Senator Ted Cruz. Thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you very much and welcome. We're here to celebrate a tremendous bipartisan accomplishment in Washington, which is at a time when there's a lot of partisan division in Washington, when it seems you can't agree on the time of day between Republicans and Democrats. When it came to the FAA, we came together and we found common ground. And just 2 weeks ago, Congress passed with overwhelming bipartisan majorities the FAA Reauthorization Act. I was the lead author of that bill, along with Maria Cantwell, a Democrat. She's the chairman of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. I'm the ranking member on the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. This bill is an historic investment into aviation safety, and into aviation jobs. When you think about flying, the number one priority has to be safety. Every one of us, when we get on a plane, when we put our families, when we put our kids on a plane, the most important question is, are we going to land safely, or are our kids going to be okay? We've seen in recent years far too many near misses that came very, very close to being heartbreaking tragedies. One of the most frightening near misses happened right here at Austin Bergstrom. When February of last year, a Southwest plane was on the runway preparing to take off, and a FedEx jet came within 150 feet of landing right on top of that jet. Had the two collided, it would have been utterly tragic. Over 120 people could have lost their lives that day. Miraculously, and due to the heroic actions of the pilot, that near miss was not actually a horrific accident. But we need to do everything possible to make sure that those near misses don't happen and that more accidents don't happen. And so this bill makes major investments into airline safety. It directs the FAA to hire the maximum number of air traffic controllers. One of the problems leading to the rising number of near misses is a shortage of controllers. The more controllers you have there, the more you're able to monitor traffic. That also helps with delays as passengers are wanting to get to their destination quicker. This bill also invests real funds in terms of runway detection equipment, so that the precise accident that nearly happened here, we will have equipment on the ground. And here in Austin, that's scheduled to be installed this summer in July. That equipment will be on the runway so the air traffic controllers have the sensors to know before a near miss occurs. This bill also invests $4 billion into airports across the country, including here in Austin, in Houston, in Dallas, in San Antonio, in Corpus, and Midland, all across the state of Texas, all across this country. And in particular, it invests in high technology air traffic controlling monitoring equipment that will be installed here in Austin to help enhance safety. Safety is step one, but I gotta say, priority number two when it comes to aviation is jobs. And aviation is critical to jobs in the state of Texas. We are a massive aviation hub. Texas is home to several major airlines, and we have hubs throughout the state of Texas with millions and millions of flights. Right here, Austin Bergstrom Airport last year had 22 million passengers coming in and out of this airport. Last year, this airport moved in designation from what's considered a mid-sized airport to a large airport because of the volume of traffic. And that's directly driven by all of the people coming to Austin, coming to Central Texas, all the companies moving their headquarters here, and the traffic that is coming. And I want to commend the leadership here at Austin Bergstrom for dealing with this traffic. This airport was designed to handle 11 million passengers. It's now handling 22 million passengers. And so they're making major investments to expand the number of gates, to expand the TSA processing, to expand the baggage processing. I just got a tour of brand new facilities, state-of-the-art conveyor belts designed to speed up processing of bags. That's incredibly important. This bill is designed to enhance aviation because aviation is responsible directly for hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs in Texas, and indirectly for millions of jobs in Texas. So many businesses depend on being able to get on a plane and go and visit your customers, or go and visit your family, or go as a tourist and travel around. And our economy is driven by having a world-class aviation system. And I will say this bill focuses on increasing competition, and also through competition on lowering prices so consumers can afford to travel better. This bill also has strong consumer protections to protect the flying public when they are in the air. Let me say a final point, which is this bill is legislation that I worked on with a number of other senators for months after months after months. We together put in thousands of hours in drafting this bill. There were multiple times when it seemed like this bill was not going to make it, when there were major divisions, and twice we had markups scheduled in the Senate, and twice the markups got pulled down because of disagreements over what was in the bill. At the end of the day, negotiating with Maria Cantwell, the Democrat, and my partner in this bill, we were able to achieve a bill that passed out of the Commerce Committee unanimously, that got the support of every Republican and every Democrat. It went to the Senate floor. And on the Senate floor, in that process, we incorporated priorities and amendments, over 200 priorities from other senators. From Republicans, from Democrats, we opened it up both to members on the Commerce Committee and to senators not on the committee, so we were reflecting the priorities of every state, of Republicans and Democrats. But the airports in Nebraska have different issues than the airports in Texas. The airports in New York have different issues than the airports in Alabama. And this bill was designed to meet the local needs with the solutions that are needed on the ground. The final battle that played out on the Senate floor on this bill concerned Texas in particular, and it concerned the city of San Antonio. San Antonio right now does not have a direct flight to DCA Reagan Airport. San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the country, and I'll tell you, the community of San Antonio is incredibly unified behind the need to have a direct flight to and from Reagan Airport. This issue first came seriously on my plate 3 or 4 years ago when a delegation from San Antonio came to my office, and they sat down and they made the case on the merits. They made the case that San Antonio has an enormous military population. Reagan Airport is right next to the Pentagon. It's right next to Arlington Memorial Cemetery, and right now people from San Antonio can't fly, and right now the choice many of them have to do is get on the road and drive up to Austin and fly from Austin to go to Reagan because they couldn't fly from San Antonio. They asked if I would take the lead to make this happen. I said I was more than happy to do so because it wasn't right and it wasn't fair. This proved, without exaggeration, the single biggest battle we had in the entire bill, because the Virginia delegation and Maryland delegation fought vigorously against adding new flights into and out of Reagan Airport. We battled on it for weeks, and at the end of the day, I'm proud to say Texas prevailed, and within 60 days there will be a brand new direct flight from San Antonio to Reagan, from Reagan back to San Antonio. That victory is a big, big deal for San Antonio. It's a big deal for Texas. And once we prevailed in that battle, the final bill on the floor of the Senate was passed 88-4. And so we brought together Republicans and Democrats. We achieved consensus behind a bill that makes major investments in safety and major investments in aviation jobs. With that, happy to take some questions. Look, the NTSB does an incredibly important job, and NTSB is within the Commerce Committee's jurisdiction. I work very closely with them. I'll tell you, I've been very impressed by the NTSB, by the engineers and the scientists when, God forbid, there is an accident. As we're all aware, not too long ago, we had Alaska Airways had a door plug blow out of the plane. And that was a very frightening accident. It remains a miracle no one was killed. It was pure happenstance that there was not a passenger sitting next to that air plug. Had there been a passenger, that passenger would have been killed. But that seat happened to be vacant during that flight. The plane landed. The NTSB, I went to the NTSB headquarters where they had that door plug, where they recreated what happened, where they examined. And what I admire about the NTSB is they engage in accident investigation without starting with the conclusion. They engage with a blank slate and say, let's figure out what happened. They discovered ultimately with that door plug that the door plug had been removed in maintenance, and when it was put back, the locking pins were not put back in place. That's an enormous problem, but knowing the problem helps to prevent it from happening going forward. I will tell you that Alaska Airlines accident also highlighted another safety improvement that was incorporated within the bill, which is, under previous federal law, the cockpit voice recorder, the black box, only records for 2 hours, which frankly is a stupid requirement, but it used to be what federal law requires. With the Alaska Airlines accident, by the time the plane had landed and the technicians made it into the cockpit, more than 2 hours had transpired, so the entire recording was erased. There was no record of what had occurred. That's obviously unacceptable. If you're trying to prevent a future accident, you want to know specifically what occurred. So one of the things this bill does as a direct result is it increases the recording time of the black box from 2 hours to 25 hours. So that, God forbid, when there is the next accident, and we know eventually something will happen, we will have a record of what exactly happened so we can understand the cause and take positive proactive steps to prevent that. And I will say I've got enormous confidence in the NTSB that they will do a thorough, professional, and a nonpartisan job just getting to the bottom of what exactly happened. Yeah. So it was a good question. Do I still think there is a pilot shortage? Absolutely. We need more qualified pilots. This bill makes some modest steps forward in terms of addressing the pilot shortage, and in particular, it provides for additional ways that pilots can get training and get the 1,500 hours they need before they can be qualified. I wish we had done more. We should have done more. And in particular, a provision that I strongly supported was a provision to raise the mandatory retirement age from pilots from 65, where it is currently right now, to 67. You know, we right now have many, many pilots who are 64, 65 years old, who have 30 plus years experience, who are the most experienced pilots flying, And because of federal law, we forced them to retire at 65. Giving them 2 additional years would give us substantially more pilots, and in particular, the most experienced pilots. I will say, unfortunately, that provision was a victim of politics in Washington. The pilots union has an interesting position on this. It's one of the very rare circumstances I know of where a union picks some members over other members, and essentially the pilots union decided it liked its younger pilots more than its older pilots, and so the pilots union leaned in and lobbied aggressively against raising the retirement age. I can tell you at the markup in the committee, we had a group of about 30 airline pilots. They were all 63, 64 years old. More than half of them were military veterans, typically Air Force pilots. They were all experienced, typically captains on major airlines. I asked each of them to stand and introduce themselves. And I encouraged the senators to look them in the eyes, because the senators were about to cast a vote to fire them, to take away their jobs. We ended up having a vote that was a party line vote. Every Republican voted to raise the retirement age. Every Democrat voted not to raise the retirement age. Because the Democrats have a 1-vote majority on the committee, that provision failed. I wish we had gotten that done, but we didn't have the votes. I can tell you I'm committed to going back and getting it done, because it's the right thing to do. And there's an irony I pointed out, that if the same mandatory retirement age applied to senators, about half the committee would not be allowed to vote. And yet they were happy to take away the jobs of some of the most experienced pilots. So this bill, as I said, takes modest steps in the direction of addressing the pilot shortage, but I wish we had been able to take more, and I'm going to continue working to take even bolder steps on that front. Yeah.
Touched on this, Senator, but we're busy here today to talk specifically about what this bill means for Austin Bergstrom International Airport.
Look, this bill means major investments in Austin Bergstrom, major investments in terms of safety, in terms of runway incursion technology to avoid another near miss, to prevent, hopefully, a tragedy of 2 airlines colliding. It also means major investments in terms of advanced technology in the air traffic control room to monitor flights as they're in the air. It also means major investments to assist Austin Bergstrom in expanding. We just finished doing a tour of the new gates that are being built. The traffic at Austin Bergstrom, I actually was amazed that there are only 34 gates at Austin Bergstrom. I lived in Austin a lot of years. I've flown in and out of this airport more times than I could count. I assumed there were more gates, because you guys do a great job turning a lot of flights with relatively few gates. The airport's in the midst of a project to add 20 more gates, to take it from 34 gates to 54 gates. That makes a lot of sense, and it will enhance the traffic that can come in and out of this airport, and hopefully reduce the delays and make it move more efficient. Yeah. Look, it's certainly responding to the threats that are there, and I think that's one of the obligations of Congress. And in fact, we had multiple hearings with the FAA administrator, asking the FAA administrator, what are the problems? Where are these near misses coming from? Right after the near miss here at Austin Bergstrom, I played in the Senate Commerce Committee a video reenactment of what happened, and I have to say it was chilling as the entire committee room saw the Southwest plane on the runway and the FedEx plane coming within 150 feet of landing right on top of it. I can't count how many thousands of times I've sat on a Southwest plane getting ready to take off, and I don't think it's ever once occurred to me that a jet might land on top of us. Looking at what happened there, I and other members of the committee asked the FAA administrator, asked their leadership, what's causing this? And this bill incorporates the answers there. So one of the things causing this is the shortage in air traffic controllers. So this bill invests in hiring more air traffic controllers. Another thing causing this, here at Austin Bergstrom, they don't have the technology on the runway to detect a near collision. This is installing that technology at airports throughout the country. This is also investing in new, more advanced technology for the air traffic controllers themselves to monitor, so they're not relying on just slips of paper and 1950s technology, but it's updating the technology. And as I mentioned a minute ago, changing the cockpit voice recorder was directly in response to the Alaska Airlines, the door plug being blown out. On the committee, when we were told, we asked, well, what does the black box show? And the FAA said, or the NTSB said, well, we can't tell you because it's been erased. Just about all of us fell out of our chair. And we said, well, that is ridiculous. And so we fixed it. And so I would say, look, there are times when the legislative process doesn't work. There are times when you have gridlock in Washington. But this was an example, I think really a model for how the legislative process should work, because we listened to testimony, we heard expert advice, we listened to the expert agencies, and we incorporated views from across the spectrum. And by design, this bill is not overtly partisan on one side or the other. We didn't go with any crazy right-wing or crazy left-wing ideas. We focused on, listen, everybody wants aviation safety. Everyone wants their kids to arrive safely where they're going. Everyone wants the aviation sector to be more efficient, to be more effective, consumers to have lower prices. And so we focused on areas of agreement, and I'm proud to say it was a great victory for the people of Texas, and it's going to make a real difference here in Austin and at every airport throughout the state of Texas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.